Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is William Sims, and I'm going to be your moderator for the next hour to introduce you to our new friends, partners, colleagues, Ali and Karl from the Skill Collective as the newest part of the Lightcast team. So, for my role, I'm Senior Vice President of Professional Services here at Lightcast and excited to welcome all of you here today. Ali and Karl, welcome to our broadcast, our live stream here. Excited to have you.
Hello.
Day.
Lightcast background noise. Y'all hear that, or is that just me? Is that the noise in my head? I don't know what the hell. But,
I did hear it. I heard it too. I heard
you
it
heard
too.
it?
But I
Okay,
promise you, I promise you, it's not in here.
I'm not as crazy as people say I am. All right, perfect. From our point of view, Lightcast. If you're not familiar with Lightcast, we're here to organize the world's data, labor market data, in its purest form to help people in workforce planning and initiatives that impact education, public sector, and enterprise businesses around the world. These guys from the Skill Collective team had similar missions in a different way and focus that was really primarily around that skills initiative. And so for a way of agenda today, we're going to talk about the introduction. We're going to introduce everybody real quick. We're going to go through kind of the history of the Skill Collective. We're going to talk about kind of inspiring entrepreneurs. Like, how do you inspire this next wave of entrepreneurs for the future of what business is going to look like, and how do skills play a role in that? And then we're going to get kind of specific. Like, what does skills really mean in actuality for the businesses and partners that we're working with on a regular basis? Throughout that, we'll talk about lessons learned, success stories, maybe some success from some failures right along the way where we learned some things and calibrate along the way. But I wanted to spend a moment now making sure you had a chance to introduce yourselves. Karl, why don't I start with you if that's okay? Why don't you introduce yourself to everybody in the audience here and what it means to be part of this group?
Love to. Hopefully, it's not my background noise that's going to be a pain in the bum. We've tried to find a nice quiet corner. Nice to be with you all. My name's Karl. I am the newly appointed VP of Skills Consulting at Lightcast, or what would traditionally have been the co-founder of Skill Collective. My role is the yin to Wally's yang, so I'm the solutions guy at Skill Collective, which talks about how we can put all of these practical, skills-based transformation solutions in play for our clients. So all the way from the diagnosis phase of understanding what you have today versus what that wonderful skills-powered future could look like. So that's really where I come from. Prior to that, 20 years of building, buying, borrowing skills globally to help organizations win. So yeah, pleased to be here. Pleased to be part of the Lightcast family.
Great. Thanks, Karl. And it might be your spot that's got a little noise in the background, so apologize for that. It's happening. Also in the background, just so you know, we got Lindsay that's kind of helping us drive this ship. We're going to have chats that are available. We'll do some Q&A work on the side, so some polls and stuff that will be launched here pretty soon. But with that, Ali, I'd like to kind of allow you some time for an introduction too. So people that don't know you, what should they know about you? Give us a little bit of your background.
Yeah, for sure. So it sounds like I'm the yang, right, Carl? I think you described yourself as the yin, and I'm the yang. So when I was at Skill Collective as Carl's co-founder, I tended to lead on all things strategy and commercial related. So now I'm in my newly appointed position as SVP of Skills Transformation and Workforce Planning here at Lightcast, which is an expanded business unit. I'm pretty sure we're going to go into kind of career backgrounds momentarily in the next section. So I'm actually going to deviate a little bit away from the professional side of things here, William, just so that the audience can get to know me a little bit more for who I am, because we tend to always introduce ourselves as like the job title that we are, but actually from the human side of me. So my name is Ollie. You can detect by my accent that I'm based in the UK. Although right now I'm in this kind of really tiny little WeWork room in the middle of New York City, because we tend to spend a lot of our time out here in the States. I'm actually missing my wingmans. Karl, I know that you're a little bit further down south at the moment. You're not in New York. You're normally responsible for bringing me snacks on these long New York days. And I've actually made the mistake of not having many snacks this morning. So I'm hoping that we're going to get through the rest of this session okay, William? But back home is my wife Carla, my son George, who is 8, and my other son Jake, who's at university in Bristol. We've got a dog, we've got a couple of cats. It's a little bit of a crazy household, but it keeps us busy. Um, if you find me away from work, I tend to, apart from snacking, tend to be really active. So I like to be out and hiking with the dog or playing sport. Used to play a lot of tennis. Now I'm a little bit older and creakier. I tend to play a little bit more paddle. But it's always about being active and keeping the health in body and in mind. So yeah, pleasure to be here. Looking forward to this conversation.
No, fantastic. Well, glad to get you two both on the line. I think it is important to understand that personal connection, right, as it ties into where we've gone professionally as well. I've got, a smorgasbord of stuff behind me that highlights my family, where I've been, what we've done. I think that stuff's always important to ground us right along the journey and the way. So thanks for sharing that, Ollie. I think as we kind of get into it a little bit, and look, I'm in my little Harry Potter under the stairwell closet here. Ollie's in a phone booth. Karl's at a nightclub or something. So it's got a lot going on. But the important thing is, like, these guys are already on the road making an impact in our business, and that's why they're not at home. They're already meeting with customers, meeting with clients on a regular basis. That might tie into some of the history that we want to kind of jump into first. Like, where did this thing start? How did it become a reality? How did your backgrounds kind of lead y'all into what was the Skill Collective? Where did it begin?
It's a great question. I'm happy to lead this off whilst Carl's in his nightclub over there. So I guess going away from that more kind of human background into the career history, the career story, because I always like to say that my story starts when I was 13 years old. So when I was 13, I played a lot of sports. So I played a lot of football or soccer for our US friends who might be dialing into this, but also played a lot of tennis. And I had this very specific day where both of my coaches told me, you need to specialize in one or the other. Otherwise, you're not going to be great at one of them. That very evening, as a 13-year-old, I was playing football with some 15-year-old lads. And some 15-year-olds are like men. And I was like this skinny 13-year-old kid and had a ball hit my face and my nose exploded and yeah, broke the nose. And that's why I chose tennis. So I ended up playing tennis, a lot of it, played professionally, but only for 10 months. So clearly wasn't that good, as I'm now kind of stuck here in this tiny room. But I went into high performance coaching. So I've always been fascinated with creating cultures of high performance. And whenever we talk to our clients now, some of the biggest clients or biggest organizations on this planet, when we talk to them about leveraging skills and capabilities, like, well, why are we doing that? Well, actually, what we're talking about is being able to leverage skills and capabilities to drive business performance, or say one component of driving a high performance culture. So that's why I always kind of start that my stories began when I was 13. It kind of transcended through tennis days, but probably some people are wondering, well, why are you in that tiny room? Why are you not tennis coaching today? And quite honestly, I became a little bit disillusioned with the governing body for the sport in the country of the UK back in my mid-20s. And I just dropped into recruitment. It's amazing how many people within Lightcast as well actually dropped into recruitment. No one ever grows up saying, I want to be a recruiter. You end up dropping into it. So I also realized I didn't want to do that forever. So charted a path, ended up working for the likes of Manpower Group with global recruitment process outsourcing. Always wanted to get to the tech side, so had an opportunity to go and join SAP. So I worked for the Field Glass line of business in SAP, and that was properly riding a crest of a wave, like global market leading product, amazing team of people behind it, was incredible. But for those that don't know much about Field Glass, that's the procure to pay platform for all contingent labor and SOW workers and actually services providers as well. So seeing this kind of whole permanent talent acquisition piece, seeing the contingent labor talent acquisition piece, and I'd left relative safety of being employee number 85,000 and something, and my employee number being P101865. You know what those times were like. To being employee 16 at a skills-based internal mobility platform back in 2019. And I joined it out of passion because the value proposition of that particular business was all about helping hiring managers in large organizations just source the skills available to get work done, regardless of how those people were contracted to the organization. So it was very much like skills and the skills-based movement before skills were a sexy thing to talk about. That particular business got acquired by a leading learning experience platform. I spent 3.5 years there, kind of focused on the go-to-market and product strategy of an experiential learning, but it's talent marketplace, which led to how did we found Skill Collective? Well, we'd had this whole kind of end-to-end experience with the talent lifecycle, particularly around skills, and we'd seen skills transformations fail. To be quite honest, like for every successful one we saw, probably saw about 30 failed ones. And I remember Karl and I think it was September 2022, right, Karl? We just kind of had a conversation and said, hey, Ollie, you kind of do the product and go to market piece pretty well. And Karl was there going, oh, I'm practitioner background. I do that piece really well. Can we join forces and come together and set up a business that helps enterprise organizations with this skills-based problem? And it was a very simple conversation, if I'm really honest. There's no kind of crazy story as to, why do you call it Skill Collective? Because we just said, like, hey, what shall we call this thing? Karl just went, Skill Collective, sound good? And yeah, great, really good, really good name for a business. So that's a little bit of my career background. And Karl, you probably want to add to that.
Yeah, Karl, what kind of color can you add? How does your background kind of weave you into this story?
Hopefully it's less nightclub now. I've just begged and borrowed with some hand signals to get less noise.
Yeah, you're fine.
It's good. How can I add some colour? Ollie and I have quite different backgrounds, to be perfectly honest. But when we talk about the complementary nature of skills, capabilities, behaviours, etc., it seems to have worked out pretty well. My career started when I was 17, and not a lot of people know this about me. I started by, at 17, joining the armed forces. So I joined the British Army when I was 17, and I served 5.5 years in the 1st Battalion, the Royal Green Jackets, as an infantry soldier. Saw the world, grew my character, and did things that you can't necessarily always talk about, but made great friends, lifelong friends, and did great things, and left there knowing that the world was changing at pace, just from the countries that I'd seen, the places that I'd been part of, and the way that you exit the armed forces. It gave me the view that the world is changing at pace, and to have that growth mindset and to have the ability to be able to adapt quickly was some of the key things that came out of being in the armed forces. From there, where did I go? God, I ran hospitality sites for 10 years for leading hospitality companies. And in my last hospitality role, I ran 36 restaurants across London, which took about £1 million a day, and was really focused on the guest and client experience to be able to drive, return or repeat custom. That was my role. And the thing about it was people centric. It was skills, jobs, people. Every single day of my life was talking about those things. So not directly in the skills world, but knowing and understanding how the things that we do in the skills works in the skills world, and I can get my words out, impacts the individual, whether that's on the shop floor, whether it's on the restaurant floor, whether it's sat in an office somewhere. The decisions that are being made around skills transformation and transformation in general is impactful the whole way through the business. And I really learned about how sentiment matters. From there, I transitioned, fell into recruitment and was a terrible recruiter, to be perfectly honest. I don't think I filled very many jobs. Did lots of talking, which was lots of fun, but didn't fill very many jobs. Went into large-scale account management for MSP, RPO, so helped an engineering consultancy and a boutique MSP provider manage their contingent labour. And there really kind of fell in love more with the process design of solutions. I got to work on some crazy stuff. If anyone knows the company WSP in the UK, and I talk about them all the time because they're just one of the smartest, most amazing companies in the world. And I had the most amazing bosses, a lady called Karl, who instilled on me how human our role was. It was all about building for the human. So I got to work on some cool projects, the Shard in London, or if you're part of London Bridge train station, that was part of the team that I was part of the resourcing management team on. So some really cool stuff. From there, I joined forces with Mr. Oliver Meager at Adepto, which we met, and that's where our kind of our story really started beginning. We both worked under the wonderful Chris Milligan, spent a lot of time, like building out the go-to-market for Adepto before the LXP acquisition. And then Ollie and I spent 3 years at building an LXP, building an opportunity marketplace, building a go-to-market model. Crazy stories, lots of growth, lots of learning. And then Skill Collective happened, and like Ollie said, it was a very logical decision to be able to start Skill Collective. I think it was a very quick decision. We both knew that we liked working together. We both knew and identified that there was a problem in the market which needed some help and some support and some guidance, and some disruption, to be perfectly honest. And we thought it was time. We thought, let's go and give this a go, and let's see what kind of happens. And we sit here today, I suppose.
Thanks, Karl. Ali, I assume that the ability to kind of start a decision, to start a business, and to make that decision and say, like, all right, we're going to go ahead and do this. Here's the premise. Here's the mindset. Here's what we want to accomplish. When you're building out kind of what are the things that we want to do, what to accomplish, I'd be curious to understand like what those were when you started, and have those changed or evolved, whether it's for personal reasons or for your customers' reasons over the journey of the Skill Collective as it kind of matured as a business.
It's a great question, and just before I get into the answer, I am wondering why Karl called me Oliver today. I must be in trouble. It's only my mum that calls me Oliver, and that tends to be when I'm in a little bit of trouble. So I'll message you later, Karl, and see what I've done wrong. But no, it was when we set up Skill Collective. In all honesty, to begin with, I think Karl, you were probably more eager to get it going, probably a few weeks before I was. We'd actually been part of a riff that had happened, that kind of started decimating the SaaS world back in 2022. And I'm sure that there's been there's people on this call, on this watching this, have been part of a riff. It's a really difficult thing to go through, and that was why I introduced the human side to me in the first instance, because actually when you go through a riff, you actually feel like part of your identity has been taken away from you. Because whenever you introduce yourself, we always introduce ourselves by our job titles, which I think is like utterly ridiculous, because our job title says absolutely nothing about what we actually do in the job, but actually says absolutely nothing about who we are as human beings and the character and the personality that we have. So I definitely went through a period of time trying to kind of battle my own inner demons, so to speak. But then I had this kind of realization that, hang on a minute, you've got skills and you've got capabilities of your own. Can you monetize them? What can you do? How can you apply them in the right way to solve real life problems and have a little bit of fun doing it, which is where kind of Skill Collective came in. But in terms of what we wanted to do, and I'll explain this answer, I think, twofold. One, kind of from the market perspective and the customer perspective, and the second one being the work environment perspective. The customer perspective was that, we'd been in situations, and this goes for anyone on this call. Sometimes you're at work and you might be delivering presentations, or you might be delivering something or talking about something that you sometimes catch yourself and you think, whoa, what did I just say? Did I actually just believe in what I said, or have I regurgitated something that I've been conditioned to say?
Yes.
Like, innovation, an innovation of thought doesn't happen by us regurgitating things. Innovation happens by people having their opinions and being able to justify them and back them, and being really authentic with themselves to be able to explain what they actually feel and what they believe. So we wanted to kind of cut through the noise. We'd seen a lot of vendor hype, and let's be honest, vendor hype still exists today. There's so much messaging around skills, there's so much hype, there's so much confusion. Enterprise organizations do not know which way to turn, because all the messages actually sound pretty good. The difficulty is that they're all a little bit different. So who do we trust? So we wanted to set up a business that really kind of cut to the truth like immediately and cut through the BS that kind of pervades across the industry. So we just really wanted to get started doing some really good, honest work backed by true values around being authentic, acting with integrity at all times, but actually being a bit bold and disruptive. Because in a funny way, being disruptive is actually just being honest. There's not enough honesty out there in the corporate world. So actually, sometimes there's a perception that your honesty is disruption in its own right. So that's kind of the market side. From the internal team development side, I think almost on day one, Karl and I looked at each other and just said, we want to build an environment where people can do the very best work of their career. And it sounds relatively cliche, but we set up values from the very start. And that was to be authentic, so always being ourselves. That was to be bold, so that if we've got an opinion, let's voice it. And that was to be committed. But when we talk about commitment, we're talking about being committed to yourself first. Look after your health, look after your mental and physical health, look after your family. Because actually, if those things are looked after, then only then can you commit to the clients and the team within which you operate. And honestly, to the other part of your question, did anything change? Well, on that basis, no. It's still about delivering really good, honest, difficult work backed with authenticity and integrity to the clients. And it's still about creating an environment for people to do the very best work of their career. Yeah, stuff shifts and evolves a little bit in terms of how you do that because the teams grow and the types of organizations that you're working with change. But honestly, from day one, the values and principles that guided us, nothing changed. And it still doesn't to this day.
Karl, when you think about that journey from when you started a conversation that seems simplistic, but obviously changed the trajectory of your at least most recent career, right? And in that process, I assume that there are hard decisions to make along that way, especially as you're trying to, what does this mean? How do we get value? How do we grow revenue? We got to get some revenue at some point. We got to make an impact. Organizations that are going to listen to us and understand what we're trying to accomplish. What kind of hard decisions did y'all have to make or adjust as you're going through maybe the early stages, maybe recently, kind of in that journey?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, when Ollie says about we did all these things, we made some of these decisions over very, very quickly. I think that was part of it. Like, are we going to grow, Skill Collective as a lifestyle brand, or are we, which would keep Ollie and I very busy, but or are we going to grow something which tries to change the world? And growing something that tries to change the world is fraught with danger. It's fraught with disruption, and you have to have that mindset that allows you to experiment, and the mindset that allows you to be sometimes slightly different to other people in the market. And some of the all the hard decisions, if I'm going to be really honest with you, William, are about people. They always are, because that's the human aspect of of creating a business, of creating a brand, and doing those things. So the things that hurt our hearts the most today are, is everybody still on our mission today that started this with us? And the answer to that question is no. So, that hurts Ollie and I the most, I think, because, it's that human connection to people. Other things that we got wrong, we really wanted to, at the start of Skill Collective, and we did a really good job of this, but we wanted to be able to be that singular voice in the market, which was agnostic on both sides. So we started, we had very good relationships deeply with vendors, skills tech vendors, and we had good relationships with enterprise clients. At the start, we were really playing in both sides. We were helping, vendors be better vendors. We were helping enterprises go on skills transformation journeys. And one of those hard decisions was that we needed to pull back from doing the vendor work, and we really needed to drive our expertise and our energies into helping organizations help their people, because that's what skills transformation is. It's about helping their people do things. You always hear me say this: better, faster, smarter, harder than they have done before. Other things we learned along the way is that it's okay to not know everything. Like, we don't know everything in the world of skills. Like, yes, we are called Skill Collective, or as part of the Lightcast company. And yes, we have collectively a whole load of people that have done all this stuff before, but we still don't know everything. And we're still experimenting, and we're still trying to find ways to really get mass adoption of this skills piece. 'Cause skills is just one of the unalienable tick a box finite elements of people doing work, right? We've got skills, we talk about competencies, we talk about knowledge, experience, we talk about all the ways that we talk about a human. Skills is probably the least adopted across the board for those. So we need to find clients that are receptive, that are to this early phase change, I always say. Other mistakes that we made: we probably drank one too many glasses of wine when we were making some of these decisions. No, I'm joking. I think we've done okay, but we've definitely learned a few things along the way. Definitely around people, definitely around environment, and definitely around how best we can help people go on this journey.
I think I want to take a step back, if y'all allow me. When I think about skills transformation, and where even that kind of nomenclature is in the overarching marketplace, to me, it varies dramatically, right? Hey, that's a fad. We've been on this journey for a long time. We would like to go on this journey, but we're not real sure where to start, how to get there. What is it kind of about skills that you feel is a driver or momentum shift? From my point of view, in working at Lightcast for 2 years, and fortunate to work with really strong economists, Elizabeth Crowfoot and Ron Hetrick, and they helped develop this kind of not only demographic drought, but this rising storm of the labor market shifts that are going to happen and are happening in part around the world, but in the U.S. going to really hit home in the next few years. I think of that kind of just numbers game around how the world of work is changing and evolving and shifting. And I think from an old practitioner's point of view, it's like, oh, well, let's just run faster and jump higher. Skills to me is really kind of moving that needle faster and more efficiently, more effectively. Like, how do you reconcile that conversation or initial conversation with organizations? And where do you see that kind of fitting in a journey cycle for them? Like, why skills? Why now? What organization? Why does this matter?
I'm putting my hand up for that one and like jumping out my seat.
That's 17 questions. Sorry, Karl. Yeah, no.
Yeah. No, I'll say some things that you'll always hear me say, right? Skills is the finite matter of work. If we get the data stack right, skills is the finite matter. So we know and understand now more than ever, because we have refined taxonomies, etc., what people are doing on a daily basis, or how we can connect them to better, faster, smarter, harder careers. The truth about skill transformation is that it is transformation. Yes, it is called skill transformation because people want to go down a skills-powered, skills-based, skills-enabled, skills-engaged journey. But really, ultimately, what we're doing here is we are solving for a negative stimuli inside of a business. There is a problem, and skills could be the answer to solving that problem. Could it be hiring faster? Could it be building better talent? Could it be retaining better talent? Could it be, deploying people better, faster, smarter, harder to get them off the bench, etc.? Is skills the answer to the problem that you are solving for? Well, the answer in some of these cases, and in most of these cases, is yes. But the data needs to be there for us to be able to do that and become more data-driven and make better data decisions. So the reason I'm so enthusiastic about it is because we're starting to build the data. We're starting to look at workforce data in a different way. We're starting to look at it in the same way that we look at financial data, so that we start to validate it, we start to add principles to it, we can start to make more confidence-led decisions around our workforce because we have a finite matter of work. So yeah, there's lots of words there, but I'm bullish because it is that lower level understanding of what we can and what we can't do with our workforce that we have never had before.
Yeah, I'm happy to add to that. And Karl, I'm still waiting for that second word. Now, you mentioned it earlier, there was 50% of word bingo has happened. But, as soon as we talk about skills transformation or skills-based, skills-aware, whatever we want to call it at any given time, organizations often have this state of inertia. Like, they don't know how or where to get started. And transformation isn't always necessary, right? To Carl's point, it's about figuring out where you as an individual organization with your organizational fingerprint, how far you need to go and which areas of the business you need to do it. But Carl was, you were mentioning a lot about data there, and I think it's a really important point. Like skills data it's another workforce data point. It's not the workforce data point that's going to solve all of your problems, but it is probably the workforce data point that transcends the entire talent life cycle. So there's a couple of things to note here. I think one, especially given our audience here, right, is that sometimes we need to simplify what skills transformation is all about. Ultimately, what we're still talking about is, can we put the right people in the right job, the right time, the right place, the right cost, learning the right things, being exposed to the right opportunities? That process has been around for a few decades now, let's be honest. We've just got this opportunity now that if we can get the data point right, we can make that process more efficient. Now, we need to make that process more efficient because the pace of change in the labour market is so extreme, and it's only going to get more dramatic as we move forward. So we need, to coin Karl's phrase, and you'll be proud of me for this, we need those finite data points to be able to use to be able to make that process more efficient.
Got it. And I think depending on where and who you're talking to within an organization, that information and data could vary wildly, I would imagine. So whether you're talking to somebody in talent acquisition, you're talking to somebody in learning and development, you're talking to somebody in the business that is trying to understand, all right, I've got a large amount of retirees that might be happening in the next few years. What skills are leaving or draining within my organization? You guys, and in communication and talks with y'all the last months and few weeks for sure, see that these data points intersect in almost every single part of an organization all the time. Is that right, or am I misreading that?
I think you're spot on, to be perfectly honest. And you'll hear me say things like a data stack. We look at organizational technology stacked on top of each other to be able to provide the outcomes we're looking for. This is the same for data. There are, multiple data sets across multiple parts of the business, which come in multiple forms, right? We've got to be able to stitch all of that together in a beautifully principled way to be able to make sense of it. And making sense of it might just be, on day one that we can take direction from that data. Do I want to hire Oliver for this job? Yes or no? Like, it's directional. Twice. I know. Yeah, I did it on purpose that time.
What have I done?
I know.
It's coming out today, man. But in 3 or 4 years' time, we don't want to make directional decisions around our workforce anymore. We want to be able to, make clear, defined, validated decisions on our workforce, and that's the direction of travel. When you say about knitting and weaving all the data together, it's multiple data points, which is incredibly, incredibly hard to do. You've got to, if I was going to give any tips, look at organizational data, look at operational data, look at employee data, look at all the different areas that you create data across your business, and start to think about data custodianship as well. Start to think about where you're creating the most data and how that data is passed into the business for the business to use. And I speak widely about TA being the biggest creator of workforce data in the world, because most things start with TA. So to your point, to stay on track, multiple data sets, multiple places, multiple principles and standards, and tying it together is the holy grail.
So, Ali, when you think about what Karl just referenced, like all these different points of time that can be tied together, I think behind AI, skills is kind of the buzzword within HR, probably last, I'll say 24 months or so, in a really productive question mark asterisk type of way. How and why is Skills Collective different in their approach and their mindset from some of the other players in this space? How do y'all approach it differently when you talk and communicate with customers, and when you pull through some of these initiatives?
Oh, I love this question because we're talking about differentiation. So there's a few things to this. How are we different? One, we're not a typical consultant. We're not a typical advisory business. And I say this somewhat in jest, but one of those, going back to one of the kind of difficult decisions that we took, Karl mentioned like the timescale of which this happened. This was the beginning of last year. I promise I'm getting to the answer to your question, William, but just providing context for everyone. When we stepped away from the vendor landscape and thought about the market that we were targeting, it's global enterprise. It's kind of Fortune 2000. We were a small team back then. That's a crazy decision. Why are you going to compete against the big four, the Deloittes, the KPMGs, the EYs, the Mercers, the PwCs? Like, are you guys crazy? It's like, well, no, we're not crazy, because the market is actually asking for something different. Like skills, being that buzzword for 24 months, William, like you said, skills transformation is new. There's no real benchmark or playbook of how to do this thing. There aren't that many successful, and in fact, I'll probably argue there still isn't one successful, complete org-wide skills transformation success story on this planet. There will be pockets of skills-based hiring or skills-based learning or whatever it might be, but org-wide, there isn't one. There's probably a reason for that, right? Going back to our earlier points, organizations probably don't need to transform their entire business process to be skills-based, because you're talking about complete operating model change to a business. It's about finding the areas that actually work. And that's kind of where we're a little bit different. We're not going to go to the market or to individual customers and say, you need to become skills-based. You need to go on a 5 to 10 year transformation journey, or you are going to be left behind. Like, that's not how it works. That's, from our perspective, that's a little bit of scaremongering. Let's work out where skills initiatives can actually move the needle on business performance and align properly to business objectives. That's one thing. The second thing is typical advisory firms, and they're brilliant in what they do. But the model is often to go and do lots of research and figure out a way to help transform organizations and advise those organizations on what they should do. And then they'll step away from that engagement, leaving stakeholders kind of stuck to be able to say, okay, this PowerPoint's brilliant, it's beautiful, but how do I do it? Like, what do I do next? So we're the ones that, our team is full of practitioners that have, like, they've got the scars, they've got the war stories. Our team will go in, they will roll up their sleeves, and they will work alongside clients to do the really difficult work. So sometimes we'll be asked at the start of engagement, how are we going to solve this problem? Well, sometimes we actually turn around and say, we don't know yet. But what we are really, really brilliant at doing is figuring out how to solve that problem with you and being able to help you to move the needle and make your organization perform that tiny little bit better than you did yesterday by using skills as a catalyst to be able to do that.
Karl, when you hear Ollie speak about that, what are the challenges, problems that you're hearing from the market that gets you excited for the work that's still left to be done, right? What are the things that clients are saying, hey, I'm not real sure how to do this. I think it's important. I need a little help and assistance, guidance, calibration, or confirmation along the way.
Good question. I think there's a number of things here, and I think some of it starts with comfort. And I think, William, you've probably heard me say this quite a lot. Clients, prospects, people that come to us and just say, hey, I want to go down this type of journey. We think it's going to benefit our business. The first thing we have to do is to give them some comfort that we know what we're doing and that we are the right hands to be able to hold them through this journey. Any transformation is disruptive. Then you've got the noise from the external market about you should transform, you shouldn't transform, to Ollie's points just a second ago. So it is a noisy marketplace. So anything that can give people a sense of comfort, a sense of relief from some of that noise, I think that's a founding element of what we try to do, is really give people confidence that we are here to be able to support them and their business transformation. And I say business transformation purposefully, because that's really what skills should do. It should transform business, as opposed to just transforming process for HR. Things that I think we get two things really. We get clients that come to us and say, "Hey, I bought loads of shiny skills tech, but it's not really working. Could you help me make it work? And I don't really know how to make it work. And can you help us patch it all together? Can you help us with the foundational data sets? Can you help us with process, policy, practice, etc., to be able to get to that point?" So there's the post-tech purchase, as I always call it, that is a big game changer. People just want their technology to be able to provide the outcomes that they bought it to do. And that's cool. We can do all of that. We can give it some good data. We can feed it with some good process. We can drive adoption. We can do as needed. The second one is a more of a considered approach, because there are organizations on the planet that come to us and say, "Hey, we're really thinking about this, and we want to think about it in a really meaningful, purposeful, and kind of considered way." And that's where we tend to go into all of this kind of deeper diagnosis of like, okay, cool, how do you do things today? And then how do we accelerate those things with a set of workforce data, as we always call it? Like, okay, cool, how does workforce data allow you to do things better, faster, smarter, harder? And there's a couple of different outcomes with all that, right? We might turn around and say, don't do it at all. That's the first thing. We might go, right, you need to do 1, 2, and 7 of these 10 things, or in some organizations it might be all 10. It really depends on the footprint or the blueprint or the fingerprint of those particular organizations. The things that about both of them, which are always interlinked and are always together: data, number one. Most organizations, somewhere between 98 to 100% of organizations that I've spoken to, are still getting a handle on job architecture, job descriptions, skills, competencies, behaviors, knowledge. They're trying to patch that foundational data layer together so that it can do something for them. That's number one. Governance is always number two. It's one of my favorite subjects: policy, process, and practice. Like the governance around taxonomies, the governance around architecture, that's something that needs to be created in some instances to be able to create regulation inside of an organization. They're the two that really stand out. They're the two that I spend a lot of my time talking about. Ollie, I'm sure that you've got more.
They're the big ones. They are the big ones. If I'm honest, job architecture piece comes up a lot. What should we do about it? How do we evolve it to be more fit for purpose? And there's a lot of organizations that are worried about how they touch it, if they should touch it, how do they evolve it without touching the actual architecture, but kind of taking it to be more relevant for the talent life cycle. But the big one, as you mentioned, Karl, is helping organizations figure out how far that they should be going. The one I think I would add that was very present at the start of our journey back in 2022 and is still so relevant today is the kind of business and stakeholder alignment. So whether organizations are figuring out being kind of considered about going on this journey, or whether they're further down the road on this journey, the business and stakeholder alignment piece is absolutely massive. And if I start with the latter, William, you touched on earlier, like the different data points across the different areas of talent and HR, talent acquisition, L&D, etc. We still see organizations now embarking on a skills transformation journey out of these kind of functional areas. So L&D might put their hand up, TA might put their hand up, and they'll be off doing their thing. And we still see it, and it's crazy, but we still see it where they're not talking to each other. L&D have got a completely different skill strategy than they have in talent acquisition. And they're all doing it for kind of the right reasons in terms of, they're often saying about improving the employee experience. The irony actually being they're making the employee experience worse because there's no interoperability within the tech ecosystem. So, that's a big thing on stakeholder alignment is essential. You need to be a team on your way to your destination or your North Star, not in these kind of crazy separate vehicles that are off trying to get to the same destination. The second thing being business alignment. When we think of probably the number one reason why we've seen failed transformations in the past, it's because there's been absolutely zero alignment to business strategy or business objective or business outcome. And too often we actually see HR aligning to business problems. They'll go and solve a problem. It's like business problem whack-a-mole. They'll go and do a great job and solve a problem, whack that mole, and then there's another problem over there to go and solve. We've got to go and whack that mole as well. Ultimately, what's going to happen, especially with the macros on the economy, there's still a lot of kind of uncertainty as to what's happening next with the economy. As soon as we start to see a little bit of certainty, something happens, right? It's critical that anyone that is driving a skills-based transformation aligns with the objectives of the business. Because at some point, the CEO is going to come down and ask why millions, or if not tens of millions of dollars are being spent on a skills ecosystem that encompasses things like consulting, advisory services, technology. You need to be able to articulate how skills initiatives are positively impacting the business objectives that a CEO has set. Now, let's be really clear, like business objectives tend to be time and money related, increasing market share, increasing profitability, revenue, taking new products to market, being more operationally efficient. We need to be able to align skills initiatives to those, not just things like improving internal mobility metrics or improving time to hire metrics. We've got to be able to tangibly link them to what the business is trying to achieve, because that is how you're going to end up being able to continue to secure a budget on skills initiatives. Because if you can say to the CEO, I helped you with your 7% market share increase because we were able to upskill our product managers to bring new products to market using said technology, what's the CEO going to say? So, cool, great. Thanks for doing a great job of making my life a little bit easier. Here's a little bit more budget, hopefully, for next year. Obviously, it's not always as simple as that, but you've got to align to the business.
It's always that simple. What are you talking about? No, I think I'm glad you talked about that. I think back to our conversation in our friend Jason Bartush's house almost 2 years ago, right? Where we started this type of conversation and speaking to it. And the thing that struck me then is this thing that strikes me now is really how do you combine this data set that is from Lightcast. And I think we have unparalleled data in the marketplace around labor analytics and cutting edge stuff that's happening in real time in the market. But also that alignment and that strategic alignment and that foundational alignment with what does that really mean? Yeah, yes, you want to improve internal mobility. Why? Where? What positions? What roles? Why does that matter to your business? What is the impact of doing some of these things? And I think the granularity that you're able to get to, you say skills transformation, it sounds like this fancy buzzword straight out of a Big Four deck. But in your minds and working with customers, there is that granularity. Getting to that granularity is the hard part of what does that really mean and how do we measure that? How do we action it over a piece of time? How do you learn from the transformation projects you've been involved with from your customers and clients about how do you break that stuff down effectively?
I know Karl wants to answer this question. So his arm moved, ready for that mute button. Go on. It's all yours.
God, I think every day's a school day, isn't it, with these things? God, where do I start on that one? It's another big question. How do we learn? I think there's a couple of things that we have to be mindful of, and we will continually learn about. And for context, I think the reason that one of the key reasons why there was a couple of key reasons why Ollie and I decided that it was a great fit for Skill Collective to become a part of the Lightcast family. And one of them was because consulting and advice and advisory is good. Consulting and advisory plus data equals action. So I give that piece of context because it's important. When you can turn around and say, hey, the data suggests that you should do this, that's a greater story than just saying we would like to do this because we think we're going to make people happier. It's the old Moneyball analogy of like, hey, the data suggests that we can get on base quicker, faster, smarter, more times by doing this. And that's really why, Ollie and I thought that it was a great way for us to become part of the Lightcast family. What do we learn? We learn that data is not perfect. We learn that our clients are learning new things about their organization all the time. We learn that the business votes with their feet on a daily basis, where we are in the middle of some form of HR transformation, and we talk to parts of the business and they're already doing things which are benefiting them from either a skills or a workforce data perspective. So I guess the one thing that I would say that we've learned the most is trying to be able to create a psychologically safe environment for organizations that work with us to come and drop their challenges into, so that we can provide really clear, demonstrable outcomes back to them. That's the learning curve, because when we do that, that's when we see real change. I thought I'd keep that one a bit shorter.
I'm happy to add to something to that kind of philosophically, right? Firstly, on the, we are now part of the Lightcast family, which is amazing. And it's that consulting and advisory that is powered by data. Like it's an amazing story. And, we've always been vendor agnostic, right? When a client comes to us and they say, this is our tech ecosystem, et cetera, et cetera. We always have to be able to work with them to maximize and optimize the investments that they've already made. That's really, really important. Lightcast, being the type of company that it is, very data powered, is agnostic in nature as well. So we get to kind of continue on that basis, which is incredibly important for the market. The second thing, in terms of the more philosophical stance around what have we learnt, there is no such thing as a perfect project. It's never existed. It never will exist in the future. This work is hard. It's really hard. And actually being able to foster really good relationships with the people and the clients that we work with is important for us, and it's important for those clients as well. To the point of, don't go on a transformation journey unless you can have a little bit of fun with the people that you're going to work with. Like life's a little bit too short. We had one client who had a great saying, which was, she said, what was it, team, we're not saving lives, we're saving PDFs. Like, let's just put a little bit of perspective and context on everything. But this goes back to sporting days. We will dissect a project upon completion. It's like we've played a tennis match, and even if we think we've won it, we performed well, there's always opportunities and areas for improvement to be able to take to the next project and to be a little bit better for the next client that comes on board. And I think that's one thing that we did really, really well as Skill Collective. If I look back to some of the really early projects, almost kind of slightly cringe. I think we tried our best, but we've completely evolved throughout time to get to a much better state, and that's incredibly important, to be able to be that little bit better than we were yesterday.
Yeah, no, I think looking at the tape of previous performance matters, right? And going back and saying, all right, let's retroactively do a postmortem, see what worked, what do we do well, and asking the customer in that conversation too. It's not a one-sided journey. It's a two-sided journey in partnership there. And so that feedback loop is critically important. I want to remind everybody, if you have a question, we're wrapping up here shortly. I'd go ahead and put it in the chat. I did get one question that came through. I wanted to ask you guys, have you seen the urgency for skills transformation change in the few years that you've been in this game, has it evolved in the last few years, and how has it changed?
That's a great question. I'll answer one part of that, just from the kind of market perspective, because there was a period of time probably around the time that we made some of the difficult decisions of Skill Collective, where there's still the question out there of, oh, is skills just the next big thing? Is it competencies 2.0? Isn't it even going to be a thing in 12 to 24 months? What we started to see last year, especially, was budget being put to teams in big global, plus 50, 50,000 employee plus organizations. Budget was being allocated to build teams of skills transformation experts to make this work inside of businesses. So that was happening for organizations that were just getting started on the journey, and it was happening to organizations that have tried and failed it in the past. So that was a really massive shift. We started seeing that in the US first, and typically speaking, that kind of tends to come over to the other side of the pond, kind of 12 to 18 months later. So we've definitely kind of seen that shift around. There's an urgency to get it right. I think that's probably the best way of putting it. There's an urgency to get it right, and therefore there's some budget being put towards being able to do so.
No, that's great. Karl, any change you've seen?
Yeah, I think part of that is being driven from the lens that I see it from. Part of that is being driven by the very top of the house inside organisations, and a lot of large organisations are using one of three kind of human capital management platforms, and over the last 2 to 3 years, those human capital management platforms have doubled down on their ability to be able to ingest or create skill data, and everybody that's connected with those HCMs are, want to maximize every single ounce of those platforms, of those pieces of technology. So we see the top of the house saying, hey, we're not using this part of this technology. It's a skills-based piece. Should we use it? Should we not use it? And I think that comes downwards towards some of the talent teams that we talk to, and they say, hey, we don't know how to use it. We want to know how to use it. Can you help us use it? And then there's also that other noise in the market that says, hey, you should use this, you should use this, you should do that. So I think it comes from the top of the house as well as from the side of the house, because because it's that influence to maximize the investment in the tech that is such a big investment for organizations.
No, I completely agree with that. I think it's one thing to make sure you have the tools in the tool chest. It's another thing. Does that mean you know how to build a house? Right. And so just because you have all the tools, are you utilizing them all? Do you know the right places to use them? And can it help you build it? That's where I think we can make sure you got the right tools that accessible to you and your teams, but also give you that advisory services. I do believe that this now makes us the true end-to-end market leader in transformation journey around skills to align those business strategies, which are now becoming more and more evolved around people, right? They're less and less around metrics. It's more people-driven strategies. Do I have the right resources to implement these business strategies holistically? Skills is a big part of that journey. I know the speed of skills change. We did a study not long ago that said 32% of skills over the last 3 years have changed, right? So this stuff is happening in real time. Skills are changing and evolving and moving and shaking. So how do you stay ahead of that as an organization? I think is critically important. We feel like at Lightcast and Skill Collective, like this is where these things kind of merge together, and we're excited to be a part of this journey. I want to give you guys each a last word here for our audience and for the folks that might be watching a recording of this. Karl, I'll go to you first, then Ollie.
Thanks, William, and perfectly hosted, may I add, for the hour that we've been online. The last thing I would always say is, like, people always say, just start. Well, I always say, be specific where you start. Find that negative stimuli. Find the problem that you are trying to, or the solution or the success that you are trying to accelerate inside your business, and go from there. That's always my guiding point is like, hey, it's easier to drive a success than it is to solve a problem. So if you're going to start skills transformation, I always think that's not a bad place to start. But I'll just say thanks for listening, and it's been great to be part of this. And I'll pass over to my esteemed colleague, Mr. Oliver Meager.
3 times. 3 times.
Doghouse.
The final note for me is just segueing from that is on that specificity, be business minded. Take yourself out of HR, connect to that business strategy, and I'm sorry, because this is like 2 things now, and have fun. Have fun doing it. Like, it's really important.
Look, I appreciate you two guys. I'm excited about the journey that we're embarking on together as a group and a team. And more importantly, the organizations that we're going to impact along the way. So that's the stuff that gets me excited in the morning. So thanks to everybody for listening and joining us. We will see you down the road. Thanks.